Welcome to Flip It Furniture. My name is Amy. Today's tutorial is for the beginner. I want to focus on the prep work and the priming mostly in this video. We'll do a whole furniture flip, but I want my main focus to be on that because it is the most important part. Okay, my drawer is not on the slide. Take out the drawer. Let me see, it's a Stanley furniture, so it's a nice little nightstand. We got some surprises. Yeah, always wear your gloves because you never know what's going to be in here. Oh, a nice glove. What is this, Thule? If you're having a hard time getting it off the track, you can, sometimes there's a little clip on the side that you can hit or check up the bottom. But a lot of times, and I know that this is going to be one of them, it's just going to be really hard to get out. So you just have to pull. Ooh. Geez, that's gross. There's a lot of dust bunnies under that one. So I'm gonna mark this as number 2. And I'm gonna go grab my vacuum. And you wanna watch out for creepy crawlies. Yeah, like you don't wanna give somebody something with a bunch of dust bunnies in there. While I still have it on its back, I want to clean inside here with my cleaner. And let's talk about which cleaner to use and why. There are tons of cleaners on the market that will work really good for you. You can use a bucket with vinegar and water. Vinegar is a really good antibacterial. It's really natural. Just white distilled vinegar, half and half I would do of water, and just scrub your piece down. Or you might want to do something with like a deglosser or a degreaser. You could also use plain TSP with water. Now, if you're going to use TSP to clean your piece, you have to rinse your piece afterwards. So good. You have to rinse it like 3 times because if that TSP is still on there, it reacts like if you're using bin shellac, it reacts really funny with bin. So you have to make sure that you rinse it off really, really well. You can use Dawn dish soap. That works. That's a degreaser. It'll get all the grime and stuff off. Just make sure you rinse it really well. You can use Dixie Belle's White Lightning, which for me is the biggest bang for your buck because you can fill one of those 16-ounce spray bottles with like 1 tablespoon. It lasts a really long time. So I use that a lot. Today we're gonna use Crud Cutter. I love Crud Cutter. I still rinse. You know, Crud Cutter, a lot of people don't rinse, but I still rinse after because I don't wanna have any issues with my paint not sticking. You know, we go through all of this work of cleaning it up and stuff, and then if your paint doesn't stick, it's a nightmare. So always when you're done, just take a rag or whatever. When you're done cleaning it, you want to take the rag and you want to just get a fresh rag with some lukewarm water and just wipe your piece down after you're done cleaning. Always, because you want to make sure that that cleaner residue isn't left on. Crud Cutter is like earth friendly. It lasts me a couple of projects. It's a little bit more expensive than say TSP or White Lightning, but it's just so incredibly easy to use. And so this would be like 10 bucks. On Amazon, I get 2 for $19.99, or you can get it at Home Depot or, you know, your local hardware store. We're probably gonna have to prime. And I'm sniffing it because I wanna see if there are odors. And I go crazy with the cleaner. I use a lot of it. That's why Dixie Belle's White Lightning is better for me, I think, because I go through a lot of Crud Cutter and it's pretty expensive. You go in and clean the inside of the cubbies. Usually they're so dirty and gross, and you can get a lot of the odor off that way. I already see some of the little repairs that we're gonna have to do. There's like frayed edges on here and down here, and we're just gonna end up sanding them later. So I'm still inspecting my piece. Before I had even cleaned my drawers, I would have taken out all the hardware, but we don't have any hardware on this piece, which makes it really, really easy. But if I did have hardware, I would have taken it out first thing, and then I would have gone and put it in a bath, which is a vinegar bath, mixture 50-50 of vinegar, and I would have left it in there for a couple of hours, and then I would have used a nylon little brush or a scrubby, and I would have just scrubbed it nice and clean. And sometimes if I don't have any vinegar, I will just clean it with some Dawn dish soap, if I'm gonna paint it, at least. So now I have a fresh rag, and I just soaked it in some warm water, and now I'm just gonna go over my piece, like super simple, nothing fancy. You don't have to scrub a dub again. You already did all that cleaning and scrubbing, so we just wanna make sure there's no cleaner residue left on the piece. We have cleaned our piece, then we rinsed our piece, and during all that we inspected our piece. So during the inspection, I do smell some odors, so that tells me we're gonna need a primer. But before I prime, I want to sand down some of these frayed edges. That's what I found during my cleanup. This is a 220. That'll do it. We don't need anything really harsh. And I'm just sanding these smooth because we don't want anybody to get a sliver on the frayed edges. That doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it does. And you just want to make sure you fix it. So I have this super fine sanding pad. I'm going over the top because the surface was really rough, so I just want to smooth it down. And I did continue to scuff sand the rest of my piece. Now this is up to you. If you have a shiny piece, I highly recommend scuff sanding the entire piece. If you don't want to do that, you could use a bonding primer instead, but you would have to do 1 or 2 coats of the bonding primer. So some people prefer just to do a light scuff sanding on your piece before painting because it helps the paint to stick to the piece. And it's really up to you to decide if you should scuff sand or not. If you cleaned your piece really well and deglossed it, then you don't really need to scuff sand. But if it's still glossy and shiny, then I would just do it. Now for priming. Today we're going to be using Zinssers bin. This you can find at your local hardware store or online at Amazon, Home Depot, Menards, Ace, wherever. This primer has shellac in it, so it is a blocking primer. It's going to block tannins and odors. If your piece is extremely shiny, then you want to use a primer that is specific for adhesion. But this one works pretty good. There are so many primers on the market. Usually paint companies have their own blocking primers, and some of them have adhesive primers. So you could look into that if you have a paint company that you love to work with. Check out their primers. They're made for furniture. I'm really big on using products that are made for furniture painting. I think that's the way to go. But I've been using Zinssers bin for years now, and it has never failed me. I really love that primer, and it literally blocks out all the odors. So this has just that weird little smell. We're gonna knock it right out. I only have to do 1 coat of my primer for this piece because it's not super stinky. So 1 coat and that should do it. Because Zinssers bin is shellac based, I am going to be using just kind of a cheaper brush. I can clean it out with mineral spirits or alcohol, but it is really hard to get out of your brushes. So make sure that if you're using a nice brush, you have a lot of denatured alcohol or mineral spirits on hand. Otherwise, you can use a chip brush or a sponge brush to apply it and then throw it away afterwards. The reason that I don't like to use a chip brush is sometimes I do get brush strokes when I'm using my primers, even the bin. And I don't want you to be able, the finish on top when you're painting, whatever's on bottom, you're gonna be able to see. So if you have brush strokes with your primer, when you put your paint over that, you're gonna be able to see those brush strokes. And for this, I just want it to be like a really clean, nice finish. I don't want there to be a lot of brush strokes. And I know we're painting, and when you're using paint, there are brush strokes, but there are ways to not get them. And I don't want to spray my furniture. I don't really enjoy spraying. Using a nicer quality brush, I do like these Worcester brushes for the primer, but again, then I'm going to have to use some mineral spirits, and I'm gonna have to take a lot more time cleaning it up. So when I'm using this bin, I've already popped it open and stirred it thoroughly. All the shellac was sitting up at the top, so it looked like some brown oil on the top. So I just mixed it and mixed it and mixed it, and then it turns into this white, and it's so watery. So you could get a lot of drips when you're using this. So I highly recommend laying down something on your floor. See, just like that, I dripped, like immediately, right out of the gate. So here, so you can get an idea of how it goes on. So watery. So yeah, you wanna just be careful. And it dries pretty quick. I'm not gonna worry about putting it in here because you don't really see that part. I'll just use my paint to cover that later. And I'm probably going to salve on the inside just to make sure nothing stinks. Now this does have an odor, but the odor is alcohol that you're smelling. So I mean, it's not, you know, it's not a chemical, it's nothing to be afraid of. This is indoor, you can use it indoors. But if something does bother you, put on your respirator. It really does not bother me. If I was spraying this, then I would put my respirator on for sure. So when I'm applying my shellac, I want to go up and down with it. And I'll show you why. Oh, I got a little piece of hair. Because if, you know, and you don't want to work it too much because you can actually overwork it and then it starts to streak. Oh my gosh, it's hair. Like right now, it's drying, so it's overworking and it's pulling. And now we can see all those brush strokes. Now if you go this way and this way, you're gonna kind of be able to see that. So let's try to keep it nice and smooth. You know, I use a little bit more than I should because it self-levels in a nice way when you do. But it's a nasty mess if it starts pulling for you too much. And if you don't like using this because it's shellac based, then I would go for something water based. This is just an amazing blocking primer. It's for me like the best one out there. Make sure that nothing's drying in clumps. You know, you want it to be smooth. Like if I get it chunky here from where it dried, that's gonna show through once you put your paint on. So you just wanna make sure that everything gets nice and smoothed out. It's really easy to go too fast and then have a big mess. So when you're using something like shellac, just take your time. You know, it's not, if you're in a rush, it's not gonna turn out. Be careful that when you go over the sides, you don't wanna be dripping because those drips will dry as drips. And you don't wanna go over your shellac too many times or it'll start pulling. And when it starts pulling, that means it's already started to dry. So say back here, it's already starting to dry. If I go back over that with my shellac, it's going to leave like ugly brush strokes and streaks. So we have to leave that alone now. You just want to make sure when you're applying it slow and smooth so that you don't make mistakes you feel that you have to go back for. You know, where I want to keep it nice and smooth, I'm going to use just like a little sponge here. So don't be afraid to try, you know, you don't have to just use your brush. try things. You can cut up a sponge to get into hard to reach spots. Our main focus is to keep it nice and smooth. So that's why I'm using this. If I had used my brush to get in there, it would just be all chunky and not nice. This way, it's just nice, easy, smooth, and that results in a nice, smooth finish. I actually love using these for shellac, and you can use like spray shellac. That's really easy. Just plain old shellac. I have a whole video on primers, which one to use. I talk about different brands and things, so you can check that one out too. I'll leave it in the description box, but I usually use those sponges. When all the bin dries, I just take a little sanding sponge or a sanding pad. I sand down the entire piece with a really fine grit, and then I wipe it down to make sure all the dust is gone. And then I'm going to continue with my project. I'm painting it in Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint in the color Sandbar. Now, I really wanted to emphasize how important the prep is, and you know, the cleaning of the piece. So in case anybody ever wants to know exactly how to do it, you could always refer back to this video. If you really focus on getting that nice smooth finish on your primer, then once you apply your paint, it goes on so nice, almost like butter. So you don't always need a sprayer. And especially with Dixie Belle's chalk mineral paint and a water mister, it is one of the only paints that I can get a brush stroke free finish with. And I want to show you that. Now, had I sort of carelessly applied my bin, you'd be able to see all these nasty brush strokes. But since I don't have any, you can actually get that brush stroke free finish. Just working it with my Dixie Belle mini brush and the water mister, I get a really nice finish. And you can basically use any good brush that you have. I love this one, and it's the one I use all the time now. And to seal this piece, I'm using Varathanes water-based polyurethane. It is crystal clear. I really like this. It's really easy to work with, and I just apply it in rows. I make sure that I'm smoothing it out as I go along. And this is what it looked like before, and here it is today. And I just want you to look and see how smooth it is. I kept trying to focus my focus in so you could see how smooth it is, but I mean, I think you can. You can see some of that little wood grain, and that's just from the piece. A lot of it has to do with that prep work. It has to do with, you know, making sure that your primer is nice, that you have sanded your piece so that there's nothing pointing out or sticking out, you know, fill holes. It's all about the prep here. If you're a beginner and you want to see more beginner tutorials, check out this video right here.